Hey, man, I just tell the truth.
Come on, man.
And they don't like that.
To conclude, they bombed the entrance and exit of an empty facility. So,
really, as you say that, I'm not surprised because Jackson made a good point yesterday. Sorry, not yesterday, just now. That Iran knew that the U.S. would probably get involved in this conflict. They knew that the Israelis were targeting their nuclear facilities. I mean, they've known this for several months. They had to have probably taken some steps to protect their nuclear capability and move things around. And just like Jackson said, we know that they absolutely understand the process from beginning to end. They obviously have mastered the cycle, procuring the elements, refining it to 90% to weapons grade. They understand the entire process and have a bunch of scientists to do so. So I would not be surprised if they had other facilities that the U.S. or Israel might not be aware of, and used these facilities that were destroyed kind of as the scapegoat to be destroyed, so they can go ahead and utilize the resources. They try to build something else. I do think something else. I was just thinking about this as you guys were talking about, what might come after this. I do think it's important to note here, besides what might happen. We talked about the oil fields being attacked, U.S. bases being attacked. China gets a significant amount of its oil from Iran. And that is due to the fact that we have an adversarial posture with Iran. And China's not stupid. They know that once we finish up in the Middle East, the Pacific Asian territories was going to be what we're going to be focusing on next. We've heard many strategists in the Trump campaign or Trump administration. You got guys like General Flynn, et cetera, that are saying that we need to be focusing on China more and more, and we need to get out of the Middle East. So knowing that, right? Regime change with Iran would significantly hurt China because that would be a country where we could put our puppet government in and have our influence in there, and that would weaken China's ability to get oil. So, as I was kind of thinking about this as you guys were all talking, I was like, damn, we're kind of at a point now where, the U.S. is going to, or Israel, and we just know that Israel's continuing to bomb them even though these facilities were knocked down as they claim. They're going to try to push for the regime change. So would China intervene to protect Iranian interests? Because at the end of the day, you can make the argument that Iran is kind of a domino that is that could potentially knock China down and lead to the U.S. now pushing into concentrating on Asia. And we obviously know that China is very interested in acquiring Taiwan for a bunch of different geopolitical and economic reasons. So, I'm just spitballing here of what could potentially happen with China, because we all know that the U.S. wants to focus on that next, and Iran gets there's quite a bit of trade between Iran and China, despite the crippling sanctions from the West. So we'll see what happens here, man.
So China already has a one policy with Taiwan, one China policy. Sorry, it's getting late here. One China policy with Taiwan. They have zero interest in reunifying with Taiwan, even though it's the stated policy. If they were to ever do that, firstly, it's all around semiconductor chips. So semiconductor chips that are needed for F-35 fighter jets, all artificial intelligence, Apple, all of the Magnificent Seven stocks, pretty much everything that makes up the economy in the world as we know it today. The Taiwan has what's called a silicon shield. So if there was ever a threat, if they were invaded, or if they were to do this against their will, the factories would actually self-destruct. And they built a whole process around ensuring that invasion can't actually happen. The estimates would be that it would create about $2.2 trillion of economic destruction. It would be a mutual destruction. It means that you wouldn't be able to buy any new iPhones, you wouldn't be able to buy any new laptops. NVIDIA would have to stop building data centers. America couldn't build any F-35 fighter jets. And it would be the same for China, even though China's been building their own capabilities. We're not quite sure at the level that they're at in their capabilities. So if this were ever to do that, you would have a worse impact than the global financial crisis. It would be mutually guaranteed destruction, and the goal wouldn't actually be achieved. So the only reason that the West talks about China wanting to reunify with Taiwan is because they want to make money from putting military equipment and military bases in Taiwan, selling weapons to Taiwan, putting them in the Philippines, putting them in Japan, and justifying why they're stealing money from the American people while they hand all that money over to American contractors to create fake GDP and profit. So the threat of that actually happening is just fear-mongering for the military-industrial complex profits.
But Simon, remember very early on, one time I told you